Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the arrival of our guest of honor, Mr. Tharman Shanmugaratnam, Deputy Prime Minister and Coordinating Minister for Economic and Social Policies, Professor Subra Suresh, NTU President, Professor Ling San, NTU Provost, and Professor Ellen Chan, NTU Vice President for Alumni and Advancement. It is my honor to welcome you on behalf of Nanyang Technological University to the official launch of NTU Institute of Science and Technology for Humanity, or NIST in short. I am Chan Xianqi, a third-year student from the School of Physical and Mathematical Sciences at NTU. To open this afternoon's proceedings, may I now invite Professor Subra Suresh, NTU President, to deliver the opening address. Professor Suresh, please.
Deputy Prime Minister Mr. Tharman Shanmugaratnam, NTU Pro-Chancellors and Trustees, Mr. Peter Ho, Chair of the NISTH International Advisory Board, Your Excellencies from diplomatic missions in Singapore, distinguished guests, colleagues, students, ladies and gentlemen. Today marks a milestone for NTU Singapore as we officially launch the NTU Institute of Science and Technology for Humanity, or NIST. What is NIST? The NTU Institute of Science and Technology for Humanity is established as a university-wide effort to synergize and coordinate NTU's strengths. It is a multidisciplinary forum to foster dialogue, discussion, and research into how science and technology impact society and humanity. NIST will bring together industry, government, academia, and non-profit organizations to develop ideas and concepts for the prudent and ethical development of technology and policy for the betterment of the human condition as the fourth industrial revolution impacts the global society in profound ways. Now is an appropriate occasion to ask two questions. My first question has two parts to it. I cheated a little bit here. Why NIST? That's the first part. And why now? That's the first question. And why NIST at NTU in Singapore? So the first question in a single unified response. Global society will continue to undergo rapid changes over the coming decades in response to the accelerating pace of technological progress catalyzed by the fourth industrial revolution. While many of these changes have positive outcomes for individual citizens, organizations, governments, and society, there are also potential concerns, challenges, questions, and other issues surrounding ethical dilemmas, inequality, workforce disruption, privacy, cybersecurity, protection of personal dignity, policy, regulation, sustainability, and more broadly, the impact of technology on the daily lives and livelihoods of ordinary people. A human-centric and ethical approach to science and technology is therefore necessary. Never before has the world faced such a critical need for scientific knowledge and expertise that is predicated on sound evidence as well as
reliable and reproducible data and information. However, to tackle global challenges effectively and in a sustainable manner, technology must also be grounded in deep ethical foundations and sound governance. In a borderless digital world where information travels instantly, our shared global future depends on making wise choices today. It is also about making wise choices surrounding the key challenges that human society will face in the coming decades, particularly in energy, climate change, health, food, dealing with artificial intelligence, robotics, autonomous systems, personalized medicine, Internet of Things, and other core ingredients underlying the fourth industrial revolution or Industry 4.0. For example, the future of work in Industry 4.0 will be quite different from what it is today. What does it mean to be an educated person in the age of artificial intelligence? What is the minimum body of knowledge that one is supposed to possess when they graduate out of a university like NTU that enables them to compete effectively for the rest of their careers when they will change jobs and perhaps even professions many times over as they live longer lives? In a future where human development or workforce reskilling becomes a matter of choice and necessity, what is the role of the individual, the organization, the government, and academia in fostering lifelong learning in a sustainable manner? As the boundaries between human and machine intelligence become less distinct, there is a critical need to reflect on the unique attributes and advantages of merely being human. Here is a provocative thought. Let's say many years from now, machines can read diagnostic images such as X-rays much more precisely and much more effectively than the human eye can possibly do. Will we reach a point where radiologists could be overtaken by machines? I hope there are no radiologists in the audience here. If that were to happen, will we reach a point in society where somebody who provides personalized human care, such as a nurse, will be appreciated in terms of compensation more by society than a radiologist? We don't know. But these are possibilities that one may encounter. Technology relentlessly pushes us to be more immediate. We know from the number of emails that we get, which others expect us to respond immediately. Precise, precision medicine, precise targeting of tumors through nanoparticles, etc. And perfect. Perfection is demanded constantly. In such a world, which will become increasingly more so in the coming decades, how do we balance that continuous pressure with the inherent human need to rest and reflect, to use all our faults, our failures, and our imperfections as catalysts for innovation and human creativity, learning from failure, falling down and getting up, and enjoy success after failure, and continue to remind ourselves that there is truth and beauty in nature's imprecision and imperfection. That also brings to the fore the need for the arts, humanities, and social sciences, not only to shape the impact of technology on society, but equally to ensure that technology, especially that increasingly is being enforced by automated machine decisions, does not interfere with creativity, originality, or discovery as human beings engage in. NIST's mission to marry technology with humanity and its launch today are therefore timely, given the immense significance and impact of Industry 4.0 on global society. That brings me to my second question. Why an Institute of Science and Technology for Humanity at NTU in Singapore? With its unique and diverse intellectual strengths, the NTU community is well positioned, and some would say uniquely positioned, to play a leading role in fostering activities that bring together global thinkers. The goal here would be to identify ways in which we can maximize the benefits of technologies while minimizing technology's possible negative effects and unintended consequences for individuals and societies. Academia in general, and NTU in particular, can serve as a catalyst for multidisciplinary, intellectually deep, and evidence-based activities with a long-term perspective at the intersections of technology, humanity, and human behavior through discussion, debate, education, research, conferences, seminars, and critical questioning in a manner that industry and government do not have the luxury to undertake. So why NTU? By some global metrics, NTU has emerged as the world's best young university for the past 5 consecutive years, as well as the fastest rising young university. Just last month, another different global benchmark named NTU one of the top 6 institutions in the world in engineering and technology. Last year, the Institution of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, or IEEE in the US, one of the largest and most influential professional societies in the world, prepared a list of top 10 young rising faculty in the field of artificial intelligence, which is a key area of the 4th Industrial Revolution. In the list of top 10 stars identified by IEEE, there are 3 young NTU faculty members. Last year, Nikkei in Japan and Elsevier in the Netherlands did another study of institutions and companies whose research in the area of AI had the most impact in terms of citations for publications and patents over a 5-year period from 2012 to 2016. At the top of their list was Microsoft, followed by NTU. Consider this: 3 major industry leaders, Rolls-Royce, HP, and Alibaba, have chosen to locate their largest theme-based university projects focusing on topics that propel Industry 4.0 at NTU on this campus. In addition, some 175 other industry partners are currently working on this campus with NTU faculty and students. The NTU Smart Campus Initiative is positioning this beautiful campus as a living testbed for trials of technological innovations in areas such as autonomous cars and buses, electric vehicles, sustainable energy, new water treatment technologies, waste management, preparedness for climate change and sea level rise, a topic that could pose existential threat to island nations such as Singapore. In other words, NTU is at or near the top of global universities whose multidisciplinary research strengths and industrial connections are increasingly recognized worldwide in areas that are poised to have a profound impact on society in the 4th Industrial Revolution. NTU is also situated in Singapore, a small nation at the crossroads of Asia, which is poised to emerge as one of the early smart nations and smart cities of the 21st century. NTU's key activities involving technology trials and their possible extension beyond our campus are undertaken in partnership with the Singapore government agencies, such as the Economic Development Board, PUB, the National Water Agency, Land Transport Authority, SMRT, the Civil Aviation Authority of Singapore, and many others. This unique partnership among NTU, local and global industries, and government agencies makes the potential for substantial impact of an institute such as NIST even more possible here than in most universities in the world. While the term technological is in our name, and the College of Engineering is the largest on this campus, the second largest college here is the College of Humanities, Arts, and Social Sciences. NIST thus provides a unique opportunity for NTU to have a profound impact on society in the 21st century by bridging the gulf between science, technology, and medicine on the one hand, and humanities, arts, social sciences, and business on the other. NIST's initial focus will be on three main thrusts: responsible innovation, governance and leadership in the age of the fourth industrial revolution, and emerging urban Asia. The topic of NIST is very broad. That's why we want to focus on three areas initially to have an impact. By investing in research and education on these subjects, by posing the right questions, and by serving as a catalyst and a forum to nurture new ideas and pathways to respond to these questions in an actionable manner, through industry and government partnerships, NTU and NIST can codify the values and lessons learned and impart it to the next generation. If we are successful in this new initiative, and we have every reason to expect that it will succeed, just imagine the kind of world we will have when they start creating impact with the values we have imparted to them. Indeed, public engagement is a core component of NIST's work. Even before today's official launch, NIST has been active in various projects to engage the public. NIST began a series of workshops, seminars, and lectures involving leading scholars and policymakers. It also launched the NTU Global Digital Art Prize that has attracted some 500 submissions so far from around the world, and the NIST Ideas Challenge that received some 90 entries. Tomorrow they'll be presenting, and very soon you'll be seeing them. The winners of the Ideas Challenge will receive their prizes shortly. NIST also took an active part in the Summer Davos in China last year and collaborates with the World Economic Forum Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution in San Francisco. NTU is grateful for the participation of top representatives of local and international institutions and companies in the inaugural NIST Roundtable this afternoon, another positive step in the Institute's public engagement efforts. In particular, I wish to thank Mr. Peter Ho, Chair of the NIST International Advisory Board and Senior Advisor at the Center for Strategic Futures, Mr. Esko Tapani-Aho, former Prime Minister of Finland, and Mr. Enrico Letta, former Prime Minister of Italy, all of whom are here today. I would also like to thank the representatives from Singapore's Smart Nation and Digital Government Office, Info Communications Media Development Authority, National Heritage Board, Surbana Jurong, and Lee Kuan Yew Center for Innovative Cities. Credit also goes to representatives of the World Economic Forum, European Research Council, Infosys, Flogen Technologies, Micron Semiconductor, Rolls-Royce, the global law firm Jones Day, Harvard University, the University of California at Berkeley, ETH Zurich, University of Applied Arts Vienna, Sorbonne University in Paris, University of Twente in the Netherlands, and Dartmouth College. And of course, I express my profound gratitude to our talented colleagues and staff right here at NTU, who are also here. As we begin this journey into new frontiers, I'm delighted to announce that Professor Vanessa Evers has been appointed the new founding director of NIST. Vanessa joins NTU on the 1st of August this year, following the unanimous recommendation of an international search advisory committee comprising NTU faculty. She is renowned for her work in the field of socially intelligent computing and human-computer interaction, and has guided teams to create real societal impact through science. She is presently Professor of Computer Science at University of Twente's Human Media Interaction Group in the Netherlands, and also serves as the Vice Dean of the Faculty of Electrical Engineering, Mathematics, and Computer Science, and Scientific Director of the university's Design Lab. Professor Evers will marshal NTU's extensive capabilities and assemble a group of leading minds at NIST who will enrich NTU's learning and research environment. NTU already has an array of very talented and motivated faculty working in the areas of science, technology, business, medicine, the humanities, arts, and social sciences. I'm confident that Professor Evers will create vital synergy that will propel NTU and NIST to new heights. I'm also pleased to announce that NIST and France's Sorbonne University in Paris intend to collaborate through a new visiting fellowship. The NIST visiting fellows, who will be experts in the areas related to science and technology studies, or in areas that have a bearing on science and technology policy, to work on knowledge exchange, research, and teaching. By expanding our global network and promoting collaboration, we hope to strengthen our resilience and create new opportunities and synergies for collaboration. I would also like to thank Micron Technology Foundation for its gift from its Advanced Curiosity Grant to support NIST's activities. I'm also pleased to acknowledge the Austrian and French embassies, represented by their ambassadors here in Singapore, for supporting this launch ceremony. I thank NTU faculty and staff for their enormous effort and dedicated work leading up to this launch. In particular, NTU Provost Ling San and Professor Alan Chan, VP for Alumni and Advancement, for all their contributions and efforts. Today's launch of NIST is the first step to an exciting future. I thank you for joining us today to witness this launch and to be a part of this global movement to make science and technology work for the benefit of humanity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Suresh. It is now with immense pleasure that I invite our guest of honor, Mr. Tharman Shanmugaratnam, on stage to deliver the keynote address. DPN Tharman, please.
Professor Subhash Suresh, President of NTU, Mr. Peter Ho, Chair of NTU's of the Institute's International Advisory Board, Professor Vanessa Evers, the Director Designate of the Institute, and everyone who's here today. First, let me just say that that was an excellent speech, Subra. A thoughtful speech, and one that explains why this is such an important endeavor. And for all of us who are interested in pattern recognition, you'll realize immediately, of course, that Subra and I are wearing the same color suit, shirt, and tie. And with a bit of data analytics, you could also expect that in 5 years' time, he'll have the same hairstyle as me. We know that we are in a new era. It's hard to define what it means, hard to define how fast it'll go, but we know that technology is pervasive, we know it's accelerating, and we're not quite sure what it will mean for the quality of our societies. And that's why this is an extremely important venture, an extremely important academic initiative, but one that will work together with government, with NGOs, with businesses, and really work to develop a thicker base of understanding on the key issues of the day. We know the benefits of the technologies that are being developed, and the benefits are tremendous. The benefits at work for productivity, the benefits for anticipating and treating diseases, the benefits for communication, and a whole range of fields. But we also have to think much more purposefully and think much harder about the potential downsides and anticipate them upfront, so that in the design of technologies and in the design of institutions that make use of technologies, we achieve what Subra called that balance of benefits and risks. There are two basic questions that we have to address that both pertain to the quality of our societies. They pertain to social health as we enter this new era. The first is that social relationships are evolving in a technology-rich environment. The social relationships that evolved over centuries based on proximity and regular interactions, proximity and regular interactions at work, where we lived, and in the community. Those social relationships are giving way, not entirely, but they're giving way to relationships and connections that are across large distances, and relationships that are often comprised of fleeting encounters. And that's life on the internet. It's short duration encounters across distances. And what does this imply for the quality of social relationships that for centuries were based on proximity and regular interaction? That's one set of questions. Another set of questions, perhaps more troubling and already quite immediate, has to do with the quality of democracies. Technology and platform economics has given rise to a new way in which information is created and being circulated. And the escalating and energetic circulation of information is already having an impact on the type and quality of democracies all over the world. And there are many types of democracies that we already have, but this is a serious question that we all face. What does it imply for expertise, for truth, and for the norms of democracy that have evolved over long periods of time, differently in different societies, but that have evolved over a long period of time? What does this escalation and this energetic circulation of information, true or false, imply for polities, for the quality of democracies? That too is a fundamental question. So I think the overarching theme of this institute, and I read from what was in your very well articulated write-up, to address questions of what it means to be a human being in the 21st century, does ultimately boil down to those issues: the quality of our societies, the quality of our democracies. And by the way, I should apologize that unlike Subra, who knows how to pronounce an acronym with 5 letters, I've never been able to master this, so allow me to call it an institute. Your initial themes, which Subra summarized in his speech, were, I think, very well conceived. And in particular, the first 2 themes, which are, if you like, the themes that cut across all the topics that you'll be addressing. First, responsible innovation, and in particular, a focus on the ethical use and implications of technology. And secondly, the governance frameworks, the guidelines and the norms that have to govern technology in order that it is used ethically. Those 2 themes, which are closely connected, are fundamental. And that has to be our starting point when we think about science, technology, economics, a whole range of other disciplines. Too much of the focus on ethics in technology today is a focus that happens after the event, after a problem has arisen. And we know many of the examples. We know of the work of the Chinese scientist last year, who modified genes before birth, the genes of a pair of twin girls. And he claimed that basically this was consistent with some loosely defined guidelines of the US National Academy of Sciences. May or may not have been, but it illustrates the importance of not having guidelines that are too vague. When they are vague, scientists will push the envelope, because the thrill of innovation is a very powerful motivation for individuals and institutions. So guidelines can't be too vague. Just today I was reading another example in the Straits Times of a Californian man who was informed of his impending death by video link by a physician with no other professional in the room with him. Unfortunately, he died the next day. But again, something which jars with our sense of what is proper, what is ethical, and what is humane. And you keep coming across these examples where the exploration of ethics is after the event and almost as an apology. And that cannot be the case. We have to think about the ethical implications of innovation in science and technology upfront and build it into the design of our solutions. That is the challenge. And it does not happen on its own. It happens when we have governance frameworks that involve governments, businesses, professionals, leaders of society, developing not just rules, but norms, social, business, and professional norms. We'll never be able to devise rules that are precise enough or that catch up with technology quickly enough. But the norms that guide behavior and that institutions have to instill and impose on their members are extremely important. It is a very difficult task, but an extraordinarily important one. And if we don't do this right, it'll be difficult for society to stay on the road to the future. We want to be on the road to the future. It has great promise, but it'll be difficult to stay on the road to the future. And what we'll see from time to time is that we skid off down the gorge. So we have to be concerned upfront with the balance between the risks and the benefits, try to maximize the benefits by mitigating the risks and, where possible, averting risks. But we have to think very hard about this issue. If I can suggest that the themes that Subra talked about, that will be the initial themes of the Institute, which are broad themes, governance, thinking about ethics, and so on, would be very usefully applied to the most important issues that we face today. So the cross-cutting themes that you spoke about, what questions should we be addressing? What are the most important questions we should address? And I would like to suggest three basic questions that we have to apply ourselves to in the 21st century. First, how can jobs be redesigned for an age of automation, data analytics, and AI? How can jobs be redesigned so as to avoid a jobless future and indeed to have job-rich futures? Second, how do we enjoy a high quality of life as we get older and as whole societies age? How do we ensure healthy, active, and purposeful lives as we age? Second very fundamental question, and it happens to be one that's going to be central to a whole range of societies in the next 20 to 30 years, including a range of Asian societies. Thirdly, how do we maximize human potential in the 21st century? What should education comprise? How do we learn most effectively when young and then through life? How do we develop the skills that will enable us to flourish in the 21st century? Those three challenges, how do we redesign jobs and re-envision work? How do we ensure that we have healthy, active, and purposeful lives, even as we and as societies get older? And thirdly, most fundamentally, how do we maximize human potential? How do we learn when young and through life? These are fundamental issues that all our societies want to succeed in, because that's what will determine whether we flourish in the 21st century. And I'll make a few comments on each of these issues. First, achieving a job-rich future. not a jobless future, and ensuring maximum contribution from everyone in a workforce. I don't want to go through the economics literature, but we know something is coming. The impact of technological innovation, the disruptions that we are likely to see, are probably overstated in the short term. You see it among some firms, you see it among some platform companies, you see it in some cities, but by and large, you don't see very much of it yet. So it's probably overstated in the short term, but very likely understated over the next 10 to 15 years. We are likely to see very significant technological disruption in the world of work across a whole range of sectors. And it'll be not just about displacement of jobs, but also the risk of a division in society between those who are advantaged by the ability to use and to master technologies and others. And this divisiveness in society will have many implications that will obviously not just be about wages and inequality, but about the whole quality of society that we live in. We're already seeing, and in the US the studies are most extensive, we're already seeing a weakening of the middle of the workforce over the last 20 to 30 years, as people with the education and skills to take advantage of the new technologies and the new business models around the new technologies have moved from the middle skill jobs to the upper skill jobs. And those with less education and skills have moved from middle jobs to the lower skill jobs. And so you have a weakening of the middle. And this is being played out in many other societies. So the fundamental question we have to ask ourselves is, what type of productivity future do we want, and how do we get there? And there are basically three types of futures that are possible. One is a continuation of a low productivity growth future, which is actually today's status quo. And as I mentioned, innovation has been overstated in its impact in the short term, because you have highly innovative firms, but it's not spread very widely. So one scenario is a continuation of that situation, slow pace of innovation across society. And that will mean stagnant wages, because if you have stagnant productivity, you have stagnant wages in the middle and at the lower ends of the wage ladder. That's not a good future. And that's why our solution cannot be to cramp or stifle technological innovation. That cannot be the future, because it's not a good social future. Second possibility is a high productivity future, where technology replaces jobs. You have fewer jobs, but productivity is high because of machine productivity and data productivity. That too is not a very attractive future, because it's one of high inequality. Those that do have jobs, particularly those at the top, will earn more rewards, more people will be unemployed, and those who do have jobs at the bottom will also earn less, because there'll be more people competing for those jobs at the bottom. So that high productivity, job displacing future is not an attractive one. The third scenario is that of high productivity, but achieved by technology augmenting human skills and augmenting human jobs. And that is a scenario which is also possible. It's a scenario where productivity is enhanced through machine and data productivity, as well as human productivity, and the augmentation of human skills through the use of productivity and data is a major enabler of this scenario. And it's not just about those on the top. It's about people up and down the workforce being able to use devices, data, applications, and having the skills to use these technologies to be more productive. And that will be a high productivity, higher wage future, and a job-rich future. That is the society we want, and that is the scenario we want. And we don't get there automatically. We don't get there by looking into a crystal ball. We get there by doing something. And what we do now and what we do year by year in the next 10 to 15 years will determine if we get there, if that is the scenario we end up with. In other words, there will be path dependence. The path we embark on now, the path we invest in now, in skills, in designing technology so they augment human beings, that path is the one that maximizes the chance that we end up with that scenario of a high productivity, high jobs, high wage future. And that has to be our task. It requires developing certain skills and attributes from young, and I'll come to that later. It requires an infrastructure as well as methods to help people in adult life keep developing and augmenting their skills. And it requires, very importantly, the redesign of jobs across a whole range of sectors so as to make possible this intelligent machine-human augmentation, this high productivity that comes about through both machines and higher human skills. And we're beginning to see it in some parts of the economy, in some parts of manufacturing, for instance. The way in which industrial robots are being used is moving away from what they call high-volume, low-mix manufacturing to low-volume, high-mix manufacturing, where robots or cobots can't do it on their own. They do it together with human beings. This flexible manufacturing involving small volumes and flexible production of different products. It's an example of where it's optimal to have robots together with human beings, highly skilled human beings working together. And there'll be other sectors where this has to be developed. And we should move away from the simple debate of will technology replace jobs, and is it 10% or 50%, was it the Oxford study or the McKinsey study, move away from that to thinking about the different tasks in each job. Because in fact, the best studies show that whether it's AI or big data or new technologies in general, they rarely replace entire jobs. Some entire jobs have been replaced, but not so many. In the main, they're replacing tasks within each job. And for the better, because it raises productivity. And what we have to do is to develop the human skills to be able to do the other tasks that complement the tasks that machines and data analytics do. Think hard about tasks in every job and train people and develop people for the tasks that machines can't do and which humans can do better than machines. That has to be our objective. And it requires not just thinking after the event, after people have lost jobs, after divisions in society have widened. It requires thinking about early and designing technologies, designing skills development programs, designing the way in which factories are organized in a way that maximizes that opportunity. There's also an important reason why humans have to stay part of the game, which is that there's a real risk if things are left entirely to machines, even highly intelligent machines, or data, or algorithms. Even today, the most sophisticated, if you think of the most sophisticated algorithms, the creator of the algorithms very often does not know how the AI agent finds its solutions. The creator of the algorithms does not know how this AI agent finds its solutions. And when you have that opaqueness, it can be quite dangerous. The solutions can be quite dangerous when applied to high-stakes situations, such as in medical diagnoses. So it's extremely important for humans to stay part of the game, even as the technologies develop and are able to do things much faster and much more efficiently than human beings. And I'm really happy to see how NTU is already progressing in this direction. And I think this institute will be not just an institute for NTU, but will be a platform for collaboration between our universities and with our businesses, our government agencies, and our labor organizations, our unions. I, by the way, had several examples in my notes of wonderful things happening in NTU, which I wanted to cite in deference to my host tonight. But I should be allowed to also cite another university, which was SUTD, and I noticed Heng Chi is here. The Lee Kuan Yew Center for Innovative Cities is engaging in a very interesting collaboration with a range of partners, including the Ong Teng Cheong Labour Leadership Institute, which only coincidentally I happen to be the chairman of. But they're doing a very interesting study on technology adoption and the experience of workers as technology is adopted. And we've got to do that ground level study in order to do the higher level design. Understand how people respond to technologies, how it can be less intimidating or more intimidating, and how do we maximize that human-machine interaction. Second theme, how do we ensure high-quality living as we age and as whole societies age? First order of business has to be to help people stay in the workforce and to be contributing meaningfully in the workforce for as long as they can and wish. That has to be the first order of business. And it requires a lot of rethinking. In Parliament last week, Minister Josephine Teo spoke about the re-employment age and the retirement age and how that's going to move up. Very important policy decision coming out of extensive consultation. But it'll be more than just legislation and rules about re-employment and retirement ages. Fundamentally, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, we need redesigned jobs for older persons, redesigned workplaces, and redesigned work weeks. What does a work week comprise of? If you're someone in your late 60s or early 70s wanting to work and contribute, is it the 8:30 to 5, 8:30 to 6, 5 days a week, or is it something else? We have to rethink the way businesses organize the work week together with employees. And there's huge potential for this. There's huge productive potential for this, but it's not just about the economics, it's about the type of society we want to build. Second, there's of course tremendous potential in the technologies when it comes to anticipating and treating disease. And you know, there's some very interesting innovations taking place at NTU. I won't go through all the details. I was fascinated by one that was developed by a team of researchers at your business school, Nanyang Business School, together with SUSS. So they're not medical scientists. This was Associate Professor Goh Kim Huat, one of his PhD students, and Dr. Adrian Yao at the SUSS. They developed a system that is able to use human medical expertise and algorithms to predict life-threatening conditions resulting from a body's responses to infection far more effectively than we're currently able to do. Very interesting example of multidisciplinary work, but led by the business school. We know, Subra spoke about radiology and so on. It's a fascinating development of the way technology is able to detect diseases more effectively than we used to be able to. So that's one area of work. And bear in mind, of course, the risk that I spoke about earlier, that there has to be some human involvement in actual diagnosis and prescription. Second very important area of work is aging in place, particularly once people are retired. And this is again where technologies can be a huge enabler. There's a project that involves the NTU, University of British Columbia Research Center on Active Living for the Elderly. Very long name, but they ended up with an acronym with 4 letters, so I can pronounce it Lily. NTU, University of British Columbia Research Center on Active Living of the Elderly, Lily, together with Tan Tock Seng Hospital. It's a project to unobtrusively assess the potential risks of frailty and pre-frailty while a person is at home. Again, lots of potential. And related to that, another team of NTU researchers, led by Professor Miao Chun Yen and her team, have, I think it's a she, I'm sorry, it may be a he, me, it's a she, yeah, have developed what they call an ADL Plus toolkit, Assisted Daily Living Plus toolkit. And what it does is, again, to track an individual's cognitive functions. The earlier project I mentioned was about physical frailty. This one is tracking an individual's cognitive functions and detects early signs of dementia in order to pave the way for remedies, early remedies, timely and personalized interventions to delay the onset of dementia. Another very important project. Third, we have to be concerned, when we think about the quality of life as societies age, we have to be concerned about the quality of social life as we age and as cities get smarter around us. Think of the quality of social life for elderly persons. And there's a lot of work required here. Sociology, psychology, urban planning, and near to home healthcare. A lot of work that's required here. It's not just about technologies. It can't just be about getting individual treatments. It has to be about social interactions. How do we ensure that quality of relationships is preserved and, in fact, enhanced in a smart city as people get older? How do we ensure that people find the technologies fun and easy to use and do it together with friends? And here too I found another very interesting project by NTU researchers from the Center for Healthy and Sustainable Cities, together with the Wee Kim Wee School of Communications and Information and our ministry, our MSF, and the Turku University of Applied Science in Finland. And they had a study looking at what's called exergames. Exergames are a combination of video games and exercise, to see how it compares with traditional exercise and how it compares with traditional care activities. And the initial findings is that there was clear psychosocial benefits coming out of these exergames. People were more addicted to it, more willing to stick to the regime of exercise because it was enjoyable. Actually, I would have told them you didn't need to do the study to find that out, but it's a good study. And finally, we have to think about this whole range of new devices that are being created. And Japan is probably foremost at this, and we have some innovations here in Singapore as well, which are these pet robots to interact with the elderly. Before you laugh at it, there are some benefits. And for instance, a study of what's called Cuddler, which is a pet robot developed by A-Star, a study by Singapore and Australian researchers and some others, found that for certain people, there are real advantages in these pet robots. So for instance, someone with visual agnosia. Agnosia is basically where you can't recognize objects. And it's nothing to do with visual or intellectual ability. It's a specific brain phenomenon, agnosia. You may have perfect eyesight, you may have perfect memory, but you can't recognize objects. People with that feature actually found these pet robots very helpful in reducing anxiety and in getting to know what was happening. So I just cite this as an example of innovations which have benefits, but think of the social implications, think of social relationships, think of the way in which people are interacting. That has to be foremost in our mind. Finally, I come to the issue of learning, the art and science of learning. How do we maximize human potential in the 21st century? Neuroscience of learning is still at its early stages. There have been some fascinating findings over the last few decades, but it's still at its very early stages compared to the other sciences and the other areas of technological innovation, I would say. But it's extremely important because if our objective is to help people maximize their potential, we do have to know what goes on in the brain when you put something in and it comes out. What went on in between? How do people learn most effectively? It's a critical issue that we have to apply ourselves to. And NTU, by the way, because you also have NIE with you, is very well placed to look at these issues. First, in this new era, what should we learn when we are young? What do we focus on? We must think hard about the skills of the future and develop when young the skills that can be developed when young. And it does mean having to develop skills that will give you the greatest advantage over intelligent machines and data analytics, not just because it gives you good jobs, but because it allows us to keep contributing and to be purposive individuals through life. And what are those skills? First, the imagination and the complex intellectual skills, sometimes short form creativity. But it's basically about developing the imagination, developing that ability to connect things laterally, not just pattern recognition, but understanding causation. It's very hard to define imagination. That's the beauty of the human AI. It's complex intellectual skills, but they're developed from young. And we've got to find ways in which we develop these skills from young. Less knowledge, more skills. Because skills developed when young will beget skills developed through life. Second, social and emotional skills. Humans will always have that edge, that unique edge. And whatever it is in our economy, our society, humans will want to interact with others, and they'll want social and emotional interaction. And that's a basic skill in life, as well as one that will give advantage. So how do we develop those two basic skills to a greater extent in future, starting from young? The imagination and social and emotional skills. Thirdly, a very important curriculum issue is how we should think about the fundamental digital skills, or how we should think about coding in education, or how we should think about children learning how to think in algorithmic terms. The pilots and the experiments have found, very interestingly, that actually children learn quite quickly the basics of thinking in algorithmic terms. They usually start with robots and they press different buttons and it goes left and right, finally ends up at the destination. That's when they're very young. But thinking in algorithmic terms is not a highly complex thing if you design that curriculum right. And moving on to coding. And we have to think about whether this is as important as the natural languages. Because if you're going to have to work with machines, work with big data, you've got to understand how it works, and you've got to understand what's under the hood. And just like natural languages allow us to talk to each other, coding is a basic language of the future. And the question then is, how early do you start teaching children the basics of thinking in algorithmic terms and of coding? And that's an important issue, non-trivial. I'm not suggesting teach as much as possible as early as possible. It's something to be thought through very carefully as part of an educational curriculum. Finally, I do want to talk about something that is turning out to be more of a problem than a solution, which is screen time. Many toddlers today learn how to swipe a device before they learn to speak. And you know what happens by the time they're teenagers. There's some studies, in fact, there was a study done in Singapore, NTU together with a think tank called DQ Institute, it's an international think tank. In 2016, they found that the average 12-year-old in Singapore spends 46 hours a week on screen time, which means videos, TV, social media, internet, which is about 6.5 hours a day. 6.5 hours a day. In Finland, I learned recently that it's 9 hours per day. In fact, it's just gone up tremendously in just 15 years. And that upward curve has been matched by a dramatic increase in incidence of anxiety, stress, and depression. I don't know the causation, but the two lines have a remarkable correlation. Studies are required. That's a casual observation, but we need to study this carefully and not just assume that things will work out. Early results from a US National Institutes of Health funded study show that excessive screen time is associated with structural differences in the adolescent brain, because we know how the brain develops. It develops through every interaction, every sensory activity from a very early age. And excessive screen time has been found, and this is initial results, to be associated with structural differences in the adolescent brain. Another study in Canada, done just last year, found that prolonged use of mobile devices and social media is harmful to attention span, memory, and impulse control of adolescents. There are some benefits. An Oxford study found that, and this was a mass study of 120,000 kids, found that some time spent on digital devices turned out to be useful, more useful than not doing it at all. Approximately 2 hours a day was useful. But excessive use is still a negative. And we have today already, in almost all our societies, well above 2 hours average use per day. I'm not saying that's some magical mean, but we all know what the problem is. That we've hurtled into a world where kids spend a lot of time looking at their screens. Every time I walk into a hawker center, by the way, which I do quite often, and sometimes you have families who've gathered, and they have the adults sitting on one table and the children sitting on the next table. And the adults will be laughing and talking, sometimes having drinks together, and the children will be looking down, not even looking at each other. So I think we have a problem. We have to study this. We have to see what can be done about it through our preschools, our schools, and our parents' ways of shaping culture at home. Finally, by the way, I said finally earlier, but actually this is finally. I'm getting old too. The whole field of adult learning requires more research. It's called Andragogy as opposed to pedagogy. There's still tremendous amount of understanding that's not there yet as to how adults learn most effectively, because that's going to be the future, developing through life and learning through life. The initial work in the neuroscience of this adult learning suggests that the probability that someone will be able to put into practice what is learned as an adult is greatly influenced by the context in which it is learned. In other words, the distance, I don't mean physical distance, but the distance of the context in which you're learning a new skill compared to the context where you're going to apply it. It doesn't mean you shouldn't do learning outside of the job or outside of the factory or the office, but it means it's got to be context relevant as much as possible. If you're learning a skill about one industry or technology and it's just adjacent to your own industry, there's ways in which you find a way of applying it. But if it's to be applied in a very different context, most people find it greatly difficult to apply what they've learned. These are initial observations. We really have to study this because we're going to put resources into it and we want it to be effective. How do you help people at different stages of their life who are not forced to go to school at 7:30 in the morning and come back in the afternoon, but who are working during the day and must keep learning during the week, during the month, and each year keep moving ahead, developing their potential? How do we help them do it as effectively as possible? So that's really what I wanted to say, and I'm sorry I've taken longer than I intended to. The question you've posed is fundamental. How do we flourish as human beings in the 21st century? How do we flourish by merely being human, as Subra put it? That's a wonderful challenge. And it involves thinking hard at work, as people grow older, and as we grow up in life. How do we develop the skills to actively contribute, to be creative, and to be ethically and technologically competent citizens? I think the institution has its work cut out for it, and the collaborative approach that you've embarked on with other universities and research institutions, with government, business, and social organizations, and your international affiliations will help you address the task in a way that I think will turn out to be very important in the years to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, DPM Tharman. Earlier today, NISTH organized an inaugural roundtable on artificial intelligence, AI for humanity, that involved some 30 leaders from academia, industry, and government with the view of producing a NISTH statement on the creative tensions between AI development and ethics and governance, as well as its impact on education. The NISTH Roundtable hopes to initiate a set of important conversations about how AI can be developed in ways that will contribute the most benefit to humanity. I would now like to invite Professor Vanessa Avers, Director Designate of NISTH, to share the findings of the Roundtable discussion. Professor Avers, please.
Thank you. Thank you for your warm welcome. I have to say, it feels like winning a prize or an award. I think I'm going to try and take the big white NIST back home to the Netherlands when I'm done here. Also, thank you, Deputy Prime Minister, for your talk. It was very inspiring, and I was so impressed with the substantive content of your talk. Really, your knowledge about how technology impacts society. It's very inspiring. Thank you. Mr. Chairman of the International Advisory Board, Mr. President, Mr. Provost, I also should acknowledge the ambassador of my country, Madam Ambassador. It's never happened to me before that the ambassador personally welcomed me to a new country, so I really appreciate it. You should consider doing that for every single Dutch person that comes to Singapore. Okay, so let me start by saying how honored I am to join all of you. And to join NIST and this wonderful team that put this wonderful day together today. It's really impressive. NTU has reached such an astounding level of academic impact in really a very short time frame. And I am extremely inspired and in awe by NTU's intention to use that newfound influence to create societal impact. I am really committed to translating science and engineering to serve humanity, and to foster collaboration across disciplines, making the future that has so eloquently been painted come true. So now I will read out the preliminary outcomes of today's roundtable discussions that we had with leaders in academia, industry, and government. We had a whole 10 minutes to put it together, so I hope it will come across well. I have to say I got excellent help from my 3 rapporteurs who are sitting there in the middle. Thank you so much for putting this together. So this will either go really well or we will all go down together. Okay, here we go. The 4th Industrial Revolution era ushers in artificial intelligence breakthroughs that will transform people's lives. It raises the need to identify urgent and complex questions that can guide scientific and technological advancement of AI that benefits humanity. At the core of our approach is a belief that collaboration across disciplines, cultures, generations, and nations is essential to achieve the desired progress. Because creativity happens when very different people meet, we will cross the differences that divide us to explore how AI innovations can help drive transformation for the betterment of all human life. This transformation will not happen by itself. We will need transdisciplinary collaboration between policymakers, scientists, civil society, artists, technology champions, and investors. The statement today calls for the launch of a process that can lead to a common, internationally recognized approach toward reflection and dialogue centered around people and the values which should lead the design, production, use, regulation, and governance of artificial intelligence. This statement also proposes a preliminary direction that can guide this process of formulating the right questions around AI for humanity and come to a deep understanding of the impact of artificial intelligence on people and society. This statement is not conclusive, but it aims to stimulate discussion between diverse stakeholders to provide a basis for further collaboration. Today we had a roundtable, and in this table, the following directions for future of AI were suggested. There were 3 topics. The first topic was ethics. Among ethical consideration that AI raises, we must be sensitive to the benefits and the disadvantages that AI brings for different stakeholders involved. Similarly, privacy has different meanings in different contexts and for different people. Instead, a more flexible ethical framework for personal data protection will allow more fit-for-purpose priorities across different political landscapes. And this will lead to many diverse policies on data protection, and it will be a bit difficult to arrive to a more general approach. One way to deal with that difficulty is to identify cross-context values that allow engagement with technology according to people's values, such as transparency of AI. Another way to deal with it is offering ethics education to train future researchers of AI and codes of practice to regulate activities of current practitioners. The second topic was governance. Governance of AI is not only the business of governments. Dialogue is essential to ensure that we understand the changes that are contextual and different for nations, businesses, governments, and sectors. NTU in Singapore may be a unique environment to have that discussion and find common values and standards. It's somewhat easier to develop principles, but translating them and putting them into practice is, of course, a lot harder. Developing use cases and standards can help in that process. The third topic was education. We must ask ourselves what sources the public consults to educate themselves, and the role that the universities and the state should take to inform and educate the general public. Our jobs are rapidly changing, and innovation is needed in education in order to prepare people to deal with change and competence in understanding complexity, critical thinking, to ensure that nobody is left behind. But we should guard for de-skilling, because AI may eliminate certain professions. We should focus on n-skilling, sometimes called upskilling. It is an important focus that needs to happen, perhaps in a tiered way, taking into account that different people need different levels of AI skills. The hardest questions to ask about AI are not technological. In developing, adopting, and governing AI, we must be explicit about our goals. And this will require courage, vulnerability, and honesty with ourselves and the world. In determining which values should guide progress in AI, we must ask the right questions about AI. Such questions allow us to understand what should be the main aim of AI, why we should have AI, for whom, what the future is of AI, and to what extent AI could expand quality of life for all living beings. As was clear from today, NIST is expected to take on a few roles. NIST is a do tank for the university to transform the way people are educated in AI. Governments and industry must get involved to protect the rights of people. We must be people-centered and not technology-centered. We should ask ourselves, what does humanity look like in the 21st century? And what does humanity want and need out of AI? NIST is also a do tank for Singapore, as an example of a smart city and a smart nation. We must develop this society and find new technology to help innovation and understand the impact of that technology, good or bad, to put it at the service of humanity. Innovation happens in cities. It happens in the universities, the industry, our schools, the governments, but it also happens in the homes of ordinary people. People who have a great idea or an important opinion that can make a change. Involving citizens in science and innovation is essential to make sure scientific achievements are translated into solutions for people in everyday society. And while cities are the motor of progress, a distance from nature has emerged that has taken people out of the loop and out of touch with the balances and rhythms of nature. In order to empower humanity, we must protect and sustain the ecosystem which it needs to thrive. AI needs to put itself in service of building sustainable cities and find long-term real solutions to counter environmental change and the reduction of biodiversity, which we encounter today. NIST aims to be the voice of the common person, the person who is afraid to lose their job or privacy. Our efforts should focus on making sure that all people equally can reap the benefits of AI and to prevent alienation. The development of AI must be human-centered and focused on the real needs of actual people. NIST is a think tank for the region, with NTU uniquely positioned to bring the Asia-Pacific countries, and especially China, to the table. There is no perfect model for the ideal AI ecosystem. We must strive to keep the discussion alive in this region and allow experimentation and sharing of knowledge to develop our own. NIST is a think tank for global nations. In the future, those that control AI, 5G, and the world's data shall have the power. It looks like all that power is currently concentrated in a few countries and a few companies. What will the world look like when there is more equality in controlling, owning, and reaping the benefits of AI? What diplomatic, governmental, federated, and united paradigms can be achieved to give humanity its best chance? To ask these questions, we must ensure that the debate has the right players at the table, including the US and China. NIST will ask the hard questions in AI, will identify the important differences that need to be bridged, will gather those thinkers and leaders that need to convene, will help to come to an understanding of what humanity of the future will look like, and will seek out new paradigms for education, not only for university students, but for the general public throughout their lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Avers, for the sharing. The NIST Ideas Challenge AI for Humanity was held from December 2018 to February 2019. This competition seeks to identify key issues in a society that is increasingly reliant on AI, to understand the basic principles and guidelines required to ensure that AI can fulfill its intended purpose, and to develop strategies to enhance the human condition, especially in a densely populated urban environment like that of Singapore. A total of 90 entries were received from NTU faculty, staff, and students. A panel of eminent judges has assessed all the submissions and selected 6 winners. All 6 winners will present their ideas at the Ideas Challenge Symposium, which starts at 10 a.m. tomorrow at Lecture Theatre 9. You are all welcome to attend. May I now invite Professor Suresh on stage to present the prizes to the winners. Professor Suresh, please. First, we would present the Commendation Awards to 3 winners. They are Rochelle Joy Chia from the School of Social Sciences, Wong Pei Wen from Wee Kim Wee School of Communication and Information, Sim Zhi Qi from the Renaissance Engineering Program, please remain on stage for a group photograph. Next, we would like to present the 3rd prize. The winner is Kadik Rati Dwi Oktarini from the School of Humanities. The 2nd prize winner is Bishaka Das from the School of Computer Science and Engineering. Finally, the top prize of the NIST Ideas Challenge AI for Humanity goes to Emmanuel Tan Chi Ping from the Lee Kong Chian School of Medicine. Congratulations. Please gather at the center of the stage for a group photograph. Let's give another round of applause to all the winners of the NISTH Ideas Challenge. It is now my pleasure to invite DPM Tharman, Mr. Peter Ho, and Professor Vanessa Avers on stage for the NISTH launch. On the count of 3, DPM Tharman, Professor Suresh, Mr. Peter Ho, and Professor Avers will insert the keys into the launch mechanism to signal the launch. 1, 2, 3. Congratulations, NISTH has officially launched. We would like to thank our guest of honor, DPM Tharman, for joining us at the NISTH launch. May we request all guests to remain seated while we invite our guest of honor and distinguished guests to take their leave.